Imagine a world where substances exist that can completely manipulate people's emotions and actions, bending their will with a single injection. In our story, a group of prisoners voluntarily signed up for a series of mysterious experiments in hopes of easing their sentences. But as the trials unfold, what they experience goes far beyond anything they imagined. What terrifying discoveries await them as they surrender control over their minds and bodies. Today, we dive deep into a tale of twisted science and broken boundaries. Prepare yourself. What happened next left everyone questioning the true price of freedom. The setting of the movie takes place in a scientific prison called Spiderhead, in which prisoners voluntarily agree to experiments with various substances. In return, they get mitigation of their prison terms. Each inmate has a Moby pack attached to his back, a container of liquids that can be controlled by Dr. Steve's phone. The substance is injected directly into his spinal cord and works instantly. The prisoner Ray gives his consent to start the experiment with the administration of the first substance, G46. After the substance is injected, the prisoner is told some unfunny jokes, but Ray can't stop laughing. Steve is a scientist doctor who works in this prison and conducts his experiments on the prisoners. Mark helps Steve with his experiments. At the end of the experiment, Ray is released. Every day, Steve flies to the alienated island on his plane. This prison is more like a bunker, far away from civilization. Our main character, Jeff, is on good terms with the doctor, as the prisoner often agrees to experiments, so he has privileges. In the morning, they go to nature for another experiment. We see Jeff being injected with N40. The prisoner is thrilled to see some very beautiful nature. In fact, the guy is looking at a factory that is polluting the environment. Steve is pleased with how N40 works. After completing the experiment, Jeff goes back to his room, where Lizzie, who he likes, is waiting for him. She has made dinner and asks how the experiment went. In the morning, Ray comes to Steve's room again for an experiment. This time, he is joined by the prisoner Heather. They begin the experiment. It turns out the couple are complete strangers and have no feelings for each other, as Jeff has a favorite girlfriend, Lizzie. After the introduction of the substance N40, they are in love and feel a strong attraction to each other. They experience sharply increased arousal. They are injected with a second drug, which makes people tell the truth. They begin to tell each other more and more about themselves, becoming increasingly attracted. They can't help themselves and get to know each other more deeply, eventually undressing and becoming intimate, even while knowing they're being watched. They're not embarrassed at all and can't stop. They are completely absorbed. When the injection stops, the infatuation vanishes immediately. Jeff and Lizzie prepare dinner for the other inmates and serve them. Jeff meets Heather, but they don't say anything to each other. During the next experiment, Steve invites Sarah, who is much older than Heather. She doesn't excite Jeff at all, but after the substance is injected, his feelings change dramatically, and he becomes intimate with her. It's time for Jeff to replenish the Moby pack, which Mark does. They talk about life, and Jeff asks to be transferred to another place. Mark agrees to help him. Heather and Sarah are invited to the next experiment. Jeff is then invited to the doctor's office to observe the experiment, where he is given the opportunity to control it with his phone. Steve demonstrates how to administer a fear substance, but Jeff doesn't want to do it. Since Jeff feels nothing for them, he's unwilling to choose. Steve says they won't be administering a fear substance called Darkenflox today, but he wants to see how the love substance N40 works in this situation. The doctor tells Jeff that N40 could make the world a better place by making everyone love. Afterwards, Jeff notices where the doctor hides his notes. Lizzie brings snacks for the prisoners and treats Jeff. The prisoner is encouraged to use the phone and calls his wife, who was in an accident caused by him. Later, Jeff goes to Lizzie's room to cheer her up. In the next experiment, Jeff is invited to another prisoner, Rogan, but doesn't want to continue. It turns out they weren't planning to inject N40, they just sit and part ways. Coming to Steve, Jeff realizes that Heather was making the same choices as him, which the doctor confirms. He explains that it's not his desire to abuse the prisoners, but that all orders come from superiors. Steve reminds Jeff of his privilege among inmates, saying everything is built on mutual respect, and Jeff calms down. Before the weekend, Steve bids Mark goodbye, mentioning the fear substance will be tested in 1 week. Later, Jeff tells Lizzie how he felt after injecting the substance. Lizzie asks why he refuses to work in the kitchen. Jeff says it's because of the new substances they're testing, and it's hard to be there, though he feels better with her around. Steve and Mark continue testing a phobia-inducing drug, causing Lizzie to fear a stapler. Afterward, they discuss why they're in prison and if it's worth it for privileges like going out in the corridor and cooking pots. Lizzie asks Jeff why he's there, and he shares that he was driving drunk when his loved ones died in a crash. Lizzie admits they chose to get in the car, and after a kiss, they went into the bedroom, then later to the kitchen to eat. Steve observes their affection and injects himself with N40, preparing for the next experiment. Jeff is supposed to inject Lizzie with the fear serum. He refuses, arguing with Steve. The doctor calms him down, suggesting he think it over. Later, Mark visits Jeff to refill his medication. Jeff closes the door and urges Mark to tell the truth, saying he saw Steve's files and realized he's in charge. Mark admits he works with Steve because of his initial vision to change the world, though things have changed. The next day, Jeff attends an experiment where Mark is absent. Steve tells him it's the last dose of the fear substance for Lizzie, but Jeff still refuses to inject it. Frustrated, Steve explains Lizzie's prison sentence and tells her to start the experiment, believing Jeff won't hurt her. Jeff proceeds, but he changes the settings to inject the fear substance into Steve instead. Steve, realizing this, tries to take the phone but is paralyzed by fear. Jeff discovers that only B6 truly matters, as it controls a person's will. Jeff questions Steve about B6, who finally admits the primary goal was to make obedient humans. Steve's vision was a planet of people working for the greater good, but he knew exposing it would mean his ruin. Steve reveals that Jeff was released 7 months ago, and Lizzie 1 week ago. Jeff opens the main gate, letting Lizzie out, and as they leave, Steve tries to attack but is unable to hurt what he loves. Enraged, he injects Lizzie with the fear serum, smashing the phone. Jeff lunges at Steve, damaging his container, and while they fight, he saves Lizzie, removing all the drugs from her MobiPack and confessing his love. Jeff manages to inject a chaotic mix of drugs into Steve, who tries to rally the inmates. But with Mark's help, Jeff and Lizzie escape, while Steve, attempting to flee in his plane, crashes into a rock over the sea. Jeff and Lizzie escape on a boat, glad it's over, heading toward a new life. The film Spiderhead 2022 leaves us with one haunting question: would you ever agree to such experiments? It's unsettling to think that substances like these could already exist in our world, hidden away, with only a few knowing who controls them and where they're used. If you're as captivated by these mind-bending stories as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our journey into the unknown. Stay tuned for more thrilling tales, mysteries, and movie breakdowns that will keep you questioning everything. See you in the next video.